Alrighty, so we are live. So, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Emily Beury. I'm a health services specialist with our Geisinger Health and Wellness team. And today I am joined by Dr. Marie Morse, who is the Director of Pediatric Neurology here at Geisinger. So I'm really excited to spend some time together talking about how healthy sleep supports cognitive function, how it protects our brain health, and serves as a key indicator of healthy aging. So I think we can all agree sleep is something we know is important, but is often one of the first things to get pushed aside between work, family commitments, busy schedules, and everything else going on. It could feel like there's just not enough time in the day. But today we're going to shift that perspective a bit, really focus on why sleep matters, not just for how we're feeling day to day, but also our long term brain health as well. So if at any point anyone has any questions, you can plug them in the Q&A. I will keep tabs on that and we can answer them at the end. And just a disclaimer before we get started that the information being provided is to increase your awareness and is not intended to be medical advice. If you believe that you have any medical conditions or specific questions regarding your health, we ask that you please see and talk with your physician. So, with that being said, I'm really glad to have Dr. Burst here with us to share her expertise and really help break down this in a way that feels practical but still relatable. So, welcome, Dr. Morrison. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Very much appreciate it. One thing I just want to share is that I have had some restructuring with my roles at Geisinger, and just to be transparent, have stepped away from the role as Director of Child Neurology. So just don't want to misrepresent myself. Dr. Eric Strong has taken over that role and is doing amazing things. And this has allowed me to spend more time focusing my energies on sleep to be well and wake up and learn, which is where we really are trying to tap into really owning the full 24 hours and utilizing sleep as a tool. So this is very apropos to have this conversation today.
Cool, cool. And thank you. I'll make sure moving forward we have that. So thank you.
No worries.
So, to help set the foundation, I think it's just helpful to start with what's actually happening behind the scenes when we are sleeping. So, to start us off, when we talk about sleep supporting our brain health, what is actually happening in our brain while we're sleeping?
Sure. So I think that first and foremost, just as a framing, many people will say, Amory, you're a neurologist, you do sleep. I thought that's a pulmonary problem. And very frequently, that's because most people think about obstructive sleep apnea. And even with that, that's still a brain-based pathology. And so the reason I start with that as a response is because sleep is a neurologic process. And in fact, it's this beautiful, unadulterated neurologic process that reflects brain health and brain resiliency. So when we're going to sleep, it's not as though our brain is just shutting off and just kind of hanging out and we're looking at it as all of a sudden there's just this magical restoration. It is actually a very intricately designed period that is so necessary, that has a lot of emphasis on our cognition, our mood, our metabolic status, our reproductive status. You name something that's important to you, it's relevant. How does this occur? Well, each stage of sleep that we cycle through has a differential impact on what we view as being high priority in our life. Number one, it's a state where we tend to see more of this, what we call parasympathetic. That's your rest, relaxation, restore nervous system. And so therefore tend to see that it's giving our body that ability to recover from all the high intensity things that we're doing throughout the day. From a cognitive perspective, it's absolutely fascinating, and our understanding of this is only growing by the moment. But there are several dynamic things that occur. Number one, there is a strategic role of specific stages of sleep. More typically are non-REM stages of sleep, like non-REM 2 and 3, slow wave sleep. These tend to be heavier set in the beginning of the night. They're very important for our declarative learning, or the things that many of us will prioritize. I learned 1 + 1 is 2. I can declare to you how that happens. If I'm working, I can declare to you the things that I'm doing in work. And therefore, having those stages of sleep become really important. On the flip side, during our REM sleep, which we tend to see increase over the course of the night with our most amount of REM sleep occurring in the later stages of the night, this is really important not only from a cognitive perspective, where it's contributing to what we call as active forgetting, getting rid of the garbage we don't need, allowing for us to have a good level set of only retaining the things that tend to be important for us to continue to grow and develop. However, it also is a stage of sleep for emotional processing. This is why many times during stressful periods in our life, our dreams may actually intensify, and we may almost feel like we're living the things that are so problematic to us or stressful to us during our dreams, is because our brain is actively trying to figure out what buckets am I putting my lived experience in, and how can that help me be more resilient the following day, even if worst case scenario occurs. Now, if that's not enough, it also is a period where our creativity processes are occurring, and it can contribute to some of our artistic outcomes. Now, that's a part of the neural networks, right? The things that our nerves are doing to say, this is how you should be connecting, and these are neurotransmitters we should make, and all that. However, the other thing that has been a part of the emerging science of sleep and really has shown to be so absolutely critical, especially when we're talking about neurodegenerative disease, is something called our glymphatic system. So it's like lymphatic, but with a G in the beginning. And so when you're talking about our lymphatic system in our body, that's our immune system. It generally is responsible for how we're getting rid of the garbage outside of our body. The lymphatic system is no different. It's getting rid of the toxic metabolites that our brain builds during the day through all the exercises it's doing, and helping to actually push it into our bloodstream so it can be filtered by things like our kidneys and our liver to excrete. This is very, very active during our deepest stage of sleep, our slow wave sleep. And when we're not getting that right amount of slow wave sleep, it creates an imbalance of how much garbage we're getting out. The reason I give this very, very long-winded description of what's going on is really to emphasize that it's not the single thing. It is a multitude of very, very well synchronized, organized things that are occurring, which also reflect why it's so important not for us just to talk about duration of sleep, but the quality, the timing, the regularity of sleep, and then being able to reflect on our daytime priorities and see how is it that our daytime is functioning, because that may actually be the heralding sign of dysfunction in your sleep, the deterioration in our daytime performance or the things that we're prioritizing.
Yes, and I think you explained that very, very well. It's a multitude of things happening, not just one. And I know for myself, and maybe for some of our audience, it can be easy to notice, oh, I feel tired, but maybe harder to connect that back to how well our brain is actually working throughout the day. So, for working adults, how does getting, you said, the quality of sleep impact everyday cognitive skills like focus or memory, what decisions we're making, problem solving, and all that?
Yeah, I think that there's several factors there. Is that if I'm a person who has chronic sleep related issues, it's going to become much more challenging for me to feel like I can disentangle that, because I now have just accepted that this lower quality of my daytime functioning is just a part of who I am. There's less that I can do. It's the cup of coffee, or I need extra coffee. And if you are that person who's listening to this and you're already in that mindset of that, I can't function until I have my coffee, or I'm looking forward to getting back into my bed later on in the day. I'm having challenges with my speed of processing what people are saying. And I'm constantly looking for what are those quote unquote hacks that I can add to my daytime to improve my performance. It really is the call to action for you to say, maybe I should look across my full 24 hours to see where are there particular things that I can intervene on. Sometimes it's daytime activities, but many times it may actually be looking at what is that sleep related factor. What I would say is very frequently the most common feature is that someone will say to me that they wake up feeling as though that they're just hunger for going back to sleep. They're sleeping through multiple alarms, et cetera. The medical term related to that is something called sleep inertia. And in its extreme form, it's actually called sleep drunkenness. And it's a very apropos term because of the fact that when someone's intoxicated with alcohol, what do they look like? They generally are kind of unpredictable. They're discoordinated. They may be combative. They're not going to really remember that period. That is exactly what sleep drunkenness looks like. They wake up, they kind of stumble out of bed, they brush their teeth, they do the things, and it's like they're driving. How did I get to work? I don't even remember eating breakfast. Did I eat breakfast? It is this extreme period where a person actually is continuing to experience that challenge related. What I would say is the most common problematic rationale as to why an average individual is unable to make this distinction or identify that sleep may be a driver or a component of their difficulties is because internationally, everyone is sleep deprived. And so when we're starting from a basis that the majority of individuals are living in a problematic state, and then that more than 25% of adults are actively sleepy, the water cooler talk is about how terrible we feel, how problematic our sleep is. And it now has been a source of normalizing and commiserating around accepting the lesser quality of who we are. And so the reason I really make that emphasis is because every single person who is listening to this has the opportunity right now, today, to start taking an inventory of what would great look like for them and where they would like to see improvements. And then now taking a look at their patterns across the day and seeing what is my time that I go to bed? How long does it take me to fall asleep? Do I wake up multiple times a night? How do I wake up in the morning? If you're starting to see any single or multiple of those being something where you're going, I think there's a point of improvement, you now have identified something that is actionable that you can now use, not just the change in those nighttime things, but really the thing that we all care about. How did that change impact my day? Did I change this thing and now I wake up better? Did I change this thing and now I'm not needing 4 cups of coffee a day? Did I change this thing and I no longer am fighting with my coworkers because everyone gets on my nerves, because I just feel more irritable and volatile because of the fact that sleep deprivation and problematic sleep causes our brain to be less resilient to dealing with those things. That would be, I would say, where I would start is not just focusing on my sleep, but really looking at my full 24 hours and looking at your priority areas, because it needs to be individualized. Otherwise, we never stick with change behavior routines because it's not giving us the return on investment. We feel like we're putting more work into something that hasn't made the difference in our life.
Yep. Yep. No, I totally agree. And earlier you were talking about quality versus hours of sleep. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that. Like, how should people think about their sleep quality compared to the number of hours they're actually getting of sleep? Because I mean, I've even heard of, I think my mom is one of them. She is like, I do so well on just 5 hours of sleep, but I am someone who I feel like I need my 8 hours of sleep. So just curious about the quality versus quantity there.
Sure. So, with that stated, I would say I would not prioritize one over the other. And there is this need to also individualize what does make me feel my best. One of the hazards that I would say when I start talking about duration of sleep versus quality of sleep is that we see that even in the sleep world where research is being done and we have big clinical meetings, it almost seems confusing and like we're being inconsistent by saying you need to get this duration, but quality is more important, regularity is more important, this is more important. And meanwhile, the person who we're talking about, which is the average individual, is going, I don't care about any of those things. Just tell me the biohack or the secret sauce that's going to allow me to feel better during the day. And so with that stated, there are what we would say are normative values that we would apply, saying that the average adult should be getting between 7 and 9 hours of sleep, and that we're really trying to look at the quality being reflective of, can I fall asleep easily? Am I staying asleep? And then am I waking feeling refreshed? Do I find that I'm a very restless sleeper, waking up multiple times in the night, using the bathroom frequently, snoring, stopping breathing, having restless life? That's your quality problems. And we can definitely make a big difference there. Sometimes we're not realizing there's a quality problem. We're just realizing that there is a daytime problem where we're not waking up well, or I wake up okay, I get through the waking up. It's just that I feel like I'm not functioning as well. That's where we will utilize things like polysomnographies or sleep studies to actually objectively look at quality of sleep. Sometimes we're even layering that in with daytime tests to objectively measure the degree of sleepiness. And so it, as opposed to encouraging people to go get a wearable and see what your sleep score is and making sure you're getting that right quality and that duration, because we now see that there's a whole new body of diagnosis called orthosomnia, the chase of the perfect sleep. It is really important for us to say, how do we approximate what is perfect for you? So if you're a person who you say, I heard Dr. Morse say I should be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and I get 6.5 hours of sleep, and I have my cardiometabolic health is great. My weight is exactly where it needs to be. I feel amazing. Everything is going great, but I need to get that 7 hours because she said I need to get 7 to 9 hours. No, no, you may be a person who is doing very well at 6.5 hours. The caution I always tell people is, are you believing that you're your best version because you've lived like that for so long that you think, like your mom has said, like, I can get away or I do my best at 5 hours? It's that I function in a way that is predictable related to 5 hours. The other part that compounds that phenomena is that when I am chronically sleep deprived and I go back and I get longer than that duration, I rebound into stages of sleep, like slow wave sleep, that I'm more likely now to wake up out of. I feel horrible when I wake up out of slow wave sleep. So therefore, it reinforces the mindset that I do better with 5 hours of sleep because I predictably know how bad I function and I can predictably compensate for that. When I sleep 6 hours, I wake up from slow wave sleep. It takes me forever. I sleep through my alarm. I'm cranky. I'm groggy. I feel horrible. That reinforces that mindset that I only should be getting the 5 hours of sleep. And so it defaults and it causes this vicious cycle. When we really look at, are there areas in my life that are not as optimal as I would like them to be? And they can be any sphere of wellness, where you can be talking about, is it my relationships? Is it the way that I look or feel? Is it my cognitive status? Is it my ability to balance my work life with having any degree of socialization or going outside? You very frequently will find that those are related to how you may be sleeping at night, because what we're doing during the day dictate how we sleep, and how we sleep dictate how we look during the day. There has been this arbitrary divide in medicine where we talk about health as a metric of daytime outcomes. And then we're like, and then there's sleep disorders. It is not that at all. Sleep is really a transdisciplinary representation of health and wellness. And so it really is a matter of taking the approach of looking at, are there things in my life that I would like to see better? And then have I also been considering, but kind of almost ignoring because it's a secondary priority, that it takes me an hour to fall asleep. And I really hate that. Or I wake up feeling like garbage. Or I hate that I have to go to the bathroom 4 times in the night. And they said it's my prostate, but my prostate, they said, is not enlarged. It doesn't make any sense. I'm on this prostate medication, or I'm on this medication to help with urination, but I'm still doing it. It might be obstructive sleep apnea. It might be another thing. And therefore, it is allowing for you to feel more empowered on all the things you can do across 24 hours versus only being relegated to the few things that you get bucketed into, because we start with disease rather than the individual living with whatever their experience is.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of that really resonates, makes a lot of sense to me. And next I'd love to just zoom out a little bit and just talk about what it means for brain health over the long run, especially, life gets busy, sleep starts to feel a little bit optional to some people. But how does sleep support long-term brain health and healthy aging? What
Yeah.
would that look like? Or even like, what mindset shift would you encourage people who often sacrifice that sleep, and how it relates to the long run?
Yeah, and this is a very common mentality, and I would say in medicine, we unfortunately wear that as our scarlet letter, right? I can get away with more sleep, and I've done so many surgeries on sleep deprivation, especially if we've gone through intensive residencies. But even outside of that, if we're night shift workers, or we are trying to balance doing that dance, that work-life balance of getting the kids to where they need to be, and all these other things, life definitely takes a hold of things, and then we're going, sleep is the afterthought. It's the luxury that I hope I can get at some point. And when retirement comes, maybe that's when I'll catch up on it. The challenge is in that time, you really are disrupting all of those things that I had described earlier in our conversation. Is that on a night to night basis, we're talking about how your brain is actually creating and reinforcing the appropriate networks to be its optimal version to support optimal health. In addition, it also is that period where we need to be getting out that garbage. What we currently will look at, if I were to just even use the framing of a neurodegenerative model, so thinking about things like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, we know that the relationship between sleep and the expression and progression of those disorders are absolutely bidirectionally related. We know that a person who's genetically susceptible to Alzheimer's disease, if I put a sleep disorder, it creates a person who is going to get to the endpoint of having that disease and having a more aggressive form of that disease a whole lot faster. And then we also know that if I were to take a model like Parkinson's disease, the sleep manifestations of Parkinson's disease manifest decades before the remaining symptoms of Parkinson's disease in many people. And so it's really telling you again about this brain health design, and that sleep and the circadian distribution of sleep, meaning the timing that we're doing it, is intricately made up so that it is reinforcing and optimizing all of those neural networks, as well as the inflammatory state that we're in and all of our autonomic or automatic functions that our body has to have. And so when looking at how we prioritize sleep across the day, I think it is incredibly important if you're a person who goes, I want to make changes that help me to be well, right? And many times we're going, okay, I can control my diet. I can control my exercise. I can control what I'm drinking, because those feel like very discrete things that I have absolute control over. When we talk about sleep, many times people go, I don't have control over that because I can't make more hours in the day. However, you can create how you utilize the hours in the day. Many of us do become guilty of not having the most optimal time management in a day because of the fact that we will find periods where there's not the mandatory you have to do something, and replace it with something that makes us feel like it's our deserved pleasure, whether that's social scrolling or just having an avoidance behavior. And therefore, that then can eat into our ability to sleep when we need to sleep. I would say that the other component is when we've had a sleep disorder for so long, it makes us also have this presumption that this is just how I'm made, as opposed to this is something I can respond to. When you're starting to normalize I'm snoring and oh, he snores and falls asleep in a chair, that really is the reflection of saying, is it just a snoring problem, or am I allowing for my husband or my best friend or whoever it is to accept something that's going to insult their brain and them to be more likely to succumb to different illnesses and injury? When you reframe it in that manner as that it's something that we do have control over to optimize, that can help us to achieve the things that we either fear or are concerning or problematic, or we know we're at risk for, it's a very different landscape, and it allows for us to then also drive the commitment to keeping those changes in check, as well as reflecting on, when I made those changes, how did it show up in my life in a positive way? That then can also make you have a greater reinforcement of there being the reason for you to focus on it. It's not uncommon that I have many adult patients who may come to me, and it's because their parent had been just diagnosed with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or some other significant disorder that they now have the fear of developing. And it's with that it's not for me to augment that fear, but for me to acknowledge that that is a realistic relationship that they do have control of helping to modify.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And speaking of, parents and different relationships, for many people, like parents or caregivers, the challenge isn't knowing that sleep's important, but rather like how do we make these healthy routines really realistic at home? So I'd love to talk a little bit about what it could look like for families and how adult habits can shape the way children think about sleep as well. So for families, parents, caregivers, what are some realistic ways to build healthier sleep routines, and how can adult sleep habits influence children's well-being at home?
Yeah, I think that these are such great questions because we know that healthy living is more likely to be implemented and sustained when it is a group dynamic. And so I know growing up, my mom constantly was on Weight Watchers and watching her weight. And so as a family, we all started to learn and be accountable to what is the diet and what are the things that we're doing? How is movement being incorporated? The same thing becomes true for sleep. If you're telling your child you need to go to sleep because you have school tomorrow and sleep is important because I want you to do well in school, and then they see you staying up past midnight trying to get the work done, we're giving mixed signals of that it's a priority to you, but I'm not as important as you are as my child to honor the same type of behaviors that should allow for me to function maximally, right? So the same thing we see with eating behaviors, don't eat that extra cookie, but I'm going to eat the extra cookie. It allows for children to understand how does these habits actually benefit, because for children, very frequently, they have that FOMO, the fear of missing out, and they don't feel tired, especially in our prepubescent children when they are overtired or past their bedtime. They generally look more like that hyperactive ADHD. They're very combative, they're irrational, they're volatile, and they're like going like they have a motor that doesn't stop. When we start to help in facilitating that, we see that gets better. I would say also the other component is utilizing the full day to respect the boundaries of what are wake promoting activities and what are sleep promoting activities. And that includes timing that we're eating, what we're eating, drinking. If we have a big, heavy meal at 7 o'clock associated with a caffeinated drink, and now we're expecting our children and ourselves to be able to go to bed between 8 and 10, that's not going to be a very successful strategy. And so it may be looking at what is the redesign of how are we eating across the day? What do dinners look like versus maybe a heavier lunch? And these are taking chapters from some of our international and European partners where they may have a heavier meal earlier than they are later. The other component is also really recognizing how do people find what is important to them. And so if you have a child who's really invested in athletics or a child who really wants to get that academic scholarship, helping them learn how that is enhancing their likelihood to achieve those outcomes by utilizing sleep as a component of that versus trying to curtail it to get in that extra practice, to study that extra hour. It might be the short-term gain, but it ends up being the long-term derailment, because once they get to college or to the workplace, those same strategies no longer work because the fact that one, your resiliency and your ability to compensate is less, but then two, the demands that are put on you are more. And so it really is coming back to the basis of like, what can we do? A lot of things that I try to exercise through my clinical practice, whether it's seeing patients in the clinic or actually patient education, working with large organizations, is really framing it around emotional intelligence type building, which is what is your self-awareness, what is your self-management, social awareness, social management, understanding what things benefit and hurt you, what you can do in response to augment the likelihood of increasing the amount of things that benefit you, decreasing the amount of things that hurt you, and then seeing how others play into that is really the crux of all this. And the reason I make that statement is because when you're talking about family dynamics, as a parent, I can say this, I'm guilty of this absolutely, is that it is not uncommon to not practice what we preach. We are invested so much in making sure that our children stay healthy and well that we sometimes compromise the things that leave us unhealthy and well. And to the answer to the question that you had also asked is, when we don't prioritize it for ourselves, what are the consequences? the consequences can be adverse childhood events where they're experiencing that their parents are fighting more because both of them are sleep deprived, they feel stressed, they have less ability to respond to that stress and an appropriate coping mechanism. They now also may be yelling at the kids more likely for things that might be trivial, but I just don't have the patience to be able to navigate that and give the right redirection. And that then can have more downstream effects of that. If I'm answering everything with yelling, what do my kids start to do? They start answering everything with yelling. And now it's a yelling match where everyone is in a very fried and vulnerable state. So there's a lot of these very complex dynamics that can occur and can be linked. And I'm not trying to say that sleep is the end all be all. It's really more so that sleep is a critical component and should be considered as a part of the pillars of things that you are fully in control of, just like diet and exercise, that can help you to be able to attain that optimal function, but also that optimal role modeling for your children and also anyone else that you may be a caregiver for.
Yeah, no, I think those are great points, and we should practice what we preach, but we don't always. And I think you talked a little bit about habits, and habits can quietly work against our sleep. So, for example, I am the person that does hit snooze. I know I should get up, and I end up not getting up. Or a lot of people I know rely on multiple energy drinks throughout the day for a busy day. So what kind of effect can habits like that have on our sleep, energy, overall well-being? Um, any better alternatives, anything like that?
Yeah. So I always like to be very thoughtful when I get when I get questions like this, because the last thing I want to do is guilt or stigmatize anyone and being like, oh, you're doing such terrible things and you're a bad person for snoozing multiple times or having multiple doses of caffeine throughout the day. And I always try to share with people that sometimes we're just trying to be the best version of who we can be based on the circumstance that we're living in. And the example I do is say the number of cups of coffee I drink during a week when I'm not on call is very different than the number of cups of coffee that I drink on the weeks that I am on call, because that's my barometer of how many times was I paged in a night, how stressed do I feel, how many things am I kind of carrying as my burden. And so if you're a person who you are snoozing multiple times or you are chronically utilizing multiple caffeinated beverages throughout the day, for myself, I would say to you, take that as a reflection point of saying, is that something that you feel is acceptable and favorable for you? Is it providing you the right way you like to start your day? Is it providing you the right way you want to navigate your day? Is it creating unnecessary cost for you? Those drinks are not inexpensive, the same as my lattes are not that inexpensive, right? And so if there are these unnecessary costs or things that aren't contributing positively, I would say, well, what do you find is a pattern that is related to this? Is this something that is occurring every single week? Is it something that tends to happen more so Monday through Wednesday, but Thursday and Friday seem better? Those now all introduce different responses we can have. Where if you're saying that it's every single day, then I'd be more concerned that there is a chronic underlying issue that needs to be addressed. Is it that I have chronic insufficient sleep? Is it that I have sleep apnea, restless leg, a hypersomnolence disorder, something else there? Is it a medical condition or a medication that is contributing, and maybe I need a different time of day to take that medication, or maybe I need to more optimally manage that diagnosis or have that diagnosis identified? If it's something that has a different pattern where Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, man, that's tough. Thursday, Friday, I feel so much better. That's where I start to say, well, what do your Saturdays and Sundays look like? Many of us look at it, this is the reward. I'm going to stay up late. I'm going to do these things. And Sunday to Monday comes, and Monday it has this very strict, I need to be up at a certain time. And we're seeing that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is where I'm recovering from the sleep deprivation that I had or the problematic sleep. And by Thursday, Friday, I'm feeling better, which is why I always have the case of the Mondays and I'm looking forward to the Fridays. And it's just saying, what can I do on those weekends that allow me to achieve that balance? So that is where I would say it really is a reflection of what is the chronicity of what you're experiencing, and then how is it presenting in a way that you view as a problem? Because if you view it as the problem, that means that there is a solution that needs to be found. If you don't view it as a problem, it's not to say that it's not a problem, but I would be a liar to say to you that that is going to come with the same sense of urgency and demand or seriousness to address it. And so that's where I really do think it becomes really important, because otherwise it just sounds like a lot of fluff that I'm talking about and you're going, yeah, it doesn't apply to me. In order for there really to be the things that are beneficial to you, you have to feel it applies to you and you have to feel as though that you're gaining something from it. Otherwise, what happens is we feel as though that we're the person that just can't be successful with strategies because we tried something, it worked for a little bit, stopped working. And many times it's not that it stopped working, it's that I stopped believing it was giving me anything that was helpful. And therefore, we tend to become inconsistent. And so I really do like to empower people to be the drivers of their own journey so that they really are designing in partnership with a healthcare professional that may have the skill set to support them in what is it that your great looks like, because it can't start at the disorder and it can't start at my preconceived metric of what good looks like, because I'll fail you every time and we won't be able to get to the point where it's something that is useful to you and usable.
Yeah. And I love that perspective. I think it's a common theme that you've been saying throughout the day. And I just noticed we are a little over on time. So I will go to the last question here for you, and it's really just to wrap things up.
Sure.
What we want to leave the audience with. So, if someone really wants to support healthy aging, starting today, what sleep habit would you give them that would be one of the biggest returns on their investment for their brain?
Yeah, I would say first, making sure you're having a measurable goal of, if you were to change your habit, how is it influencing you during the day? Because again, you're not going to stick to it if you're not finding, you're not going to be like, in 20 years, I'll see what the benefit is. No one's going to stick to that. I would say then do the thing that you can stick with. If you're a person who you're going, oh my God, it takes me forever to fall asleep and I'm just laying there tossing and turning, then I would say make reasonable goals of, one, talk to someone who may be able to give you some guidance on how to address it. But then don't think that you're going to go from I lay in bed for 2 hours to fall asleep to that it's going to take me 20 minutes. I would say choose goals that are likely. If I fall asleep 15 minutes earlier than the 2 hours, that's a step in the right direction. The same as if my weight loss goal is 100 pounds, I'm not a failure in losing weight if all I've lost in the first 2 weeks is 5 pounds. It is the direction that I want to go. It may not be the velocity at which I want to have it done at, but your body is telling you that it is in a system imbalance and is trying to get back to that equilibrium. And so sometimes, although we want the speed, we want the magic pill, we want to be able to erase all the problems that we've created, it really is a matter of what can I do that I can be consistent with that now becomes a part of my lifestyle, rather than thinking that there actually are these biohacks that everyone kind of socializes as this is your magic pill or magic thing you're going to do. It really is a matter of how can you stay consistent so that you can continue to reap the benefits, rather than have inconsistency that we sometimes will self-characterize as individual failures for ourselves, and that we're just lost cases that can't do better. We all can do better every day. It's just a matter of remembering that it's progress over perfection, and that we really just want to see that we're able to sustain change that is something that is bringing us a value that will continue to drive us to have that same behavior.
Yeah. And I think we covered a lot today. I saw some heart emojis on there, so I think everything's really resonating with everyone. And we talked a lot about everything from sleep affecting our day to day, our decision making, all the way to aging later throughout life and different conditions. And we talked about so much today. So I just want to thank you again, Dr. Morris. I think it was a great reminder to be more aware of, how our sleep can really help us now and also impact us down the road. Gets pushed to the side, but after today's call, maybe it shouldn't. Maybe we should be rethinking the best version of ourselves and what that looks like. Um,
Absolutely.
with that being said, I don't see anything in the Q&A, but If anybody does have questions at any time, feel free to either send them to our wellness email, wellness@geisinger.edu, or plug them in the Q&A and we can answer them via email later if this isn't the right form where you want to ask it. But I'm also going to just share my screen quick. 1 second here. And here is a QR code. We do value your feedback. So if you want to take a moment to complete the survey by scanning the QR code there, it just really helps us ensure that the education being provided is, relevant, useful, meaningful, and any suggestions that you might have as well. I could also drop the link for this in the chat as well. Um, but with that being said, I'll leave this on screen a little bit more. But thank you so much, Dr. Morse, for being our guest speaker. I really loved the conversation today. I resonated with me, and I think it'll resonate with a lot of others as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. As always, it's a lot of fun, and I appreciate the audience who took time out of their busy day to tune in and listen. And in addition to the webinars, please reach out to myself or my project manager, Christina Blessing. If you find that there's materials that would be useful for any of our staff, faculty, et cetera, that is related to sleep and circadian health and any of the disciplines, our Sleep to Be Well program and our Wake Up and Learn program, our growing programs that are available through our clinical enterprise in our community, as well as through our health plan. And we're always looking to understand where are people struggling and what can we do to make that lift lighter, because I agree with you. The goal really is how can we continue to be the better versions of who we are. I always quote when Terry Gilligan first came here, my favorite thing wasn't what we're currently saying, is that we want to be the best. My favorite thing that he said was we want to be the best at getting better. And I think that that's a theme that we all can get behind, because being the best is temporary, but being the best at getting better every day and using those metrics of success that are important to us can really drive, I think, a better Geisinger community, but also the best versions of who we can be.
Yes. And thank you so much. I think it was a great reminder today. I see in the chat, they'd love to hear more on this subject. So more to come. I think we'll have to schedule another one.
Would love to. Would absolutely love to. I think it's an important topic, and any way that we can continue to do this, and if people have ideas of how we socialize these types of messages even more, especially within our communities, both our working community, but also our outside of Geisinger community, we would love to have people work alongside us and also give us the suggestions that we think will make impact.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you for spending time, even though we went over. I apologize for that.
Yes.
But thank you so much. I will leave you go, and the recording will also be available afterwards. I will send that out to everyone as well. But okay.
Wonderful. Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Everybody have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.